Lord Chair and comrades, thanks very much for inviting me to open the rally today. And I suspect the theme of much of this weekend has been hashtag Socialists Rising. And if you're on Twitter, you should be using that alongside hashtag Socialism 2015 to promote the whole weekend and this rally itself. But the hashtag Socialists Rising comes from America. It's almost as if it was time to give us something to open this rally with. The latest results now from Seattle show a stunning 9% lead for Sharma Sawant in her re-election as a Socialist Council member in Surrey. Sharma has been victorious against the candidate backed by rich corporations, though it's worth making the point that Sharma's campaign raised more money from small donations than even what the rich corporations of America gave to her opponents. And that was because her campaign tapped into the pre-existing mood in America for millions for whom capitalism isn't working. Grafted that an imposing candidate in the form of Sharma, who spoke here at Socialism last year, the policies for a $15 an hour minimum wage, for rent controls, for taxing the rich and corporations. Now, not that that in its widest sense made those people into socialists. It was their experiences of insecurity, of low pay, of lack of decent employment, which causes them to question the way society is organised, and that, like the Seattle campaign, which pointing the way to change has been the function of this weekend for us and for our party, to harness that anger and show a way that people can win. Because Britain's no different to America in that sense. Millions in work for the last decade, suffering stagnation or falling wages. At least 2 million facing the insecurity of 0-hour contracts. For the young, on top of that insecurity, a 50,000 debt if they've gone to university, and the chance of acquiring a home of their own slipping further and further away, unless, as one panellist said on Question Time on Thursday night, you happen to be the daughter or son of an oligarch here in London. And on key economic questions, it's been a rising and consistent mood amongst people in this country to say that the public ownership of essentials, whether that be rail, energy or the post, by 2-1 in favour. When it comes to taking private property profits out of the NHS, a 4-1 majority, and that's what Jeremy Corbyn tapped into. But it was significant, not just his election in September, but the fact that that is only the first step. Already, the policies which Jeremy put forward in the summer of that radical change have been neutered or disowned by shadow cabinet spokespersons almost every day since he himself was elected. And the reason is simple. Over 90% of the Parliamentary Labour Party, of Labour council groups, of the Labour Party machine do not support that radical socialism. And in fact, austerity Labour, which is still in charge of those sections of Labour itself, has been neutralised by its adoption of pro-market policies. Now, the suspension of Andrew Fisher, which has been in the news over the last 2 or 3 days, is the latest illustration of the determination of the right within the Labour Party. Like sharks, once they've tasted blood, they go away to tell their mates and they come back for more and for more. We've got 2 parties inside Labour now inhabiting that space. The one, Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell, inspiring tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people, but without power. And those within the Labour Party who control the aspects of the machine I've already mentioned. The bulk of the 200,000 who joined Labour over the summer and had a vote for Jeremy, their next vote is to decide who should be the county council candidates in 2017. That's the way in which the constitution of Labour currently works. That means the existing Labour councils and candidates in the May 2016 elections up and down the country, the ones who are closing care homes in Leeds, threatening to close libraries in Coventry, closing fire stations virtually all over the country, they can't be challenged inside the Labour Party because the new members don't get that vote until a year or 2 down the line. So if Jeremy remains a prisoner of the existing Labour Party constitution, then it won't be possible for that change to take place. And that's why it was so disappointing this afternoon that John Lansman, the director of Momentum, set up in order to harness the movement and the energy of the new members of Labour, refused to come to Socialism and debate with Peter Taff this afternoon. I think that was a mistake on John's part, not to openly discuss with the strongest force outside the Labour Party, but also because it seems to be an indication that Momentum is limiting its role, its challenge to austerity Labour, purely on constitutional basis. And don't take my word for it. Julius Caesar and Shakespeare about the tide in the time of the affairs of man, which taken at its flood can lead on to fortune. That mood in the summer of enthusiasm for radical socialism will not stay there inevitably unless it's harnessed in some serious way. So what is Momentum proposing? Well, its first national campaign, launched 2 weeks ago, which runs up to the 1st of December, is for registration of voters. Now, it's true that nearly 8 million people are not on the electoral register, and some 2 million are reckoned to drop off the register when changes come in on December the 1st. But it echoes an existing Labour campaign which recognises that the Tories will use those low registration figures to reduce the number of constituencies next year, which may disproportionately affect currently Labour-held seats. Now, it's not time to develop the point here, but enthusiasm or otherwise for using the right to vote is not just an organisational question. It's political. That's why 10 to 12 million of existing registered voters don't vote for anybody at general elections because they can't see a party that offers a serious, realistic alternative. Now, conversely, over the next 4 weeks, TUSC will be writing to every one of the 2,300 Labour councillors and candidates standing for election or re-election in May of next year. We'll be organising delegations of local trade unionists to visit those councillors and to argue against local plans for cuts in jobs and services. And whilst it's possible that some local councillors may have been inspired by Jeremy and decided that they now intend to resist austerity, like the heroic councillors did in Southampton, Warrington, Hull and Leicester, and TUSC has worked with all those comrades in those areas. If we find councillors of that nature, TUSC looks forward to working with them against local austerity. But if we don't find councillors of that calibre, well, we stood over 600 candidates in the May elections this year, and we'll be prepared to stand as widely as that in the elections that are coming next year as well. Ironically, TUSC could be delivering Jeremy Corbyn's radical socialist agenda on local authority, resisting austerity from outside the Labour Party, whilst those who currently control the left within the Labour Party are restricted to a voter registration campaign. Now, that's not just an academic argument. Local authorities have already seen 40% of their budgets going, biggest cuts since the Second World War. Osborne on the 25th of November will announce in the autumn economic statement another £20 billion worth of cuts in local and national government departments on top of the £12 billion that were brought into welfare this summer. It could be that half the remaining jobs and services in local government go. Workers who provide those services will have to struggle. Communities who rely on those services will have to struggle. And in my view, it's the job of socialists who support those jobs and services to be therefore struggling alongside those workers and communities, including standing candidates against austerity. To finish, comrades, let me just make this one central point which I've made before at meetings like this, that the austerity of the last 8 years, sharp and vicious though it's been, has been but the latest phase of a generalised attack on the gains of the working class over the last 40 years. Because 40 years ago, the mid-1970s, this country was one of the most equal countries on the planet. But in the last 40 years in general, and the last 8 years in particular, that balance has changed. From 2/3 of this country's wealth in the 1970s going to working class wages, now it's only 50%. And in the last 8 years, the richest 1,000 people in this country have seen their wealth double to £550 billion, whilst all establishment politicians are telling us that the only way to sort out the economic problems of this country is to attack the living standards of the working poor. There is no reason for that to take place, and we as a party, we as our involvement in TUSC and in our trade union work are determined to resist against it. Politics in this country is essentially run for the interests of 117 billionaires and 350,000 millionaires. And we need a party that stands for the interests of the millions, not the millionaire class within this country. Jeremy has raised the hopes and aspirations that socialist change is possible, put socialist ideas back on the agenda. But to achieve, really achieve socialist change, to maintain that socialist change, to get full employment, decent living standards, free education, renationalisation of rail, of post, of energy and the other industries that were stolen from us, requires a fundamental breach with capitalism. It requires the rational planning of the resources of this rich country. For that, we need socialism. For that, I urge you to join the Socialist Party and help us build for that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jim. That was really good.